Right, good afternoon, everybody. Now that I know how to use the mute button. You know, the nice thing about doing a lightning talk, especially at the end of the conference, is that everyone's discussed all the things that you're probably going to talk about. So I've got a lot of slides, and my apologies to the translators, because I'm probably going to speak very quickly just to get through them all. I want to talk about Quad9, which is an initiative that PCH was involved in. My name is Nishal Gobadan. I'm an internet analyst at Packet Clearinghouse. Nope. Redundancy. And unlock it. This doesn't come out of my time, right? Okay, so we all know what the DNS is. It's the universal phone book that we use to be able to resolve stuff. I'm not going to talk about that because this is a very technical audience. There's no point talking about the problems because you know it. So in very simple terms, you know already that DNS is unencrypted. It's open to man-in-the-middle attacks. You know that the DNS can provide you with a very rich trail of PII. That's personal identifiable information, and you might be protected by the GDPR here, but the rest of the world, well, we still got to catch up. You know already that the DNS service is measured by how far you are to the service. So if you're using an Anycast service right now, if the service dies for some reason, the next server that you might get sent to may not be in your immediate location. It might not be in Prague or Vienna, but perhaps somewhere in London. As I said, performance is limited to the distance that you have to get to the servers on the other side. And when there's things like cache misses, when the DNS server that you're trying to use doesn't understand or doesn't have what you're trying to get to in its cache, for example, you want to resolve controlfreak.co.za, which is my home email address, domain. You probably don't have that. You have to look up .za and then .co.za, and it just gets progressively worse. Okay, people that do not sign anything just make it even worse because, well, there's always the option that you can get DNS interception happening along the way. There's the case of DNS operators that actually sell the queries. So there are industries actually in the United States whose sole purpose is purely just to take DNS logs, parse that, and provide information to the folks that have provided it. The logs so that they can figure out who you are and what you're doing on the internet. So the DNS is insecure, but it's something we live by. It's something that we need to use every day because, let's be honest, it's the first thing that people generally forget about when it breaks. Now, it's clear to everybody that this monetization of DNS, this lack of privacy around DNS was becoming a problem, especially because lots of folks were saying things like use our Anycast resolvers because they're a good thing. So about 2 years ago, IBM Global Cyber Alliance and PCH entered into a partnership to try to provide secure private DNS servers to the world. This is not an advertising slide. I put this up here to deal with all the skeptics in the audience. And I know that most of you are skeptics because you're technical, which makes you automatically skeptic. I know I am too. And it's here purely to discuss or to explain the role that each of the organizations have. Quad9 got the cool prefix 9.9.9.0. So that's their role in all of this. They provided us with the prefix, and they provided us with funding for the project. Additionally, the IBM security team, the X-Force team, they provide us with a block list, and I'll talk about that in a bit. The GCA guys came up with the idea of doing this and making it available across the world, and they provided some funding. And PCH, if you don't know what we do, we run a large Anycast network across the world. We support TLD operators and not-for-profit, things that are good for the internet. And what we do is we're the underlying network that the stuff runs on. On top of all of this, there's a separate not-for-profit called Quad9. Quad9's business is to do what I'm going to talk about now. And its business is purely to deal with DNS. So how does it protect you? Well, the first thing that it does is it doesn't log your source IP address. And that's the source that you're coming from. It's the source of all your PII. So unlike other operators who tell you, we will log it, we will store it for 1 hour, and we'll anonymize it and then delete it from disk forever, this is never logged. Your IP address is absolutely just never, ever stored. What is stored is the source network you come from, and whether or not the query that you're trying to do hit one of the malware flags, and I'll explain that in a bit. The second thing that it did at Instantation, when it went live about a year ago, when it went live about a year ago, it supported and was the first to support DNS over TLS. So if you're into encryption and you think encryption is a good thing, then off the bat, this provides the ability to run it. In fact, there are nice community tutorials online. If anybody here uses pfSense, there's a very nice tutorial that the community has done to show how to get DNS over TLS running to this. We mentioned a bit about the performance issue that you expect to see when you have a cache miss. Well, Quad9 is usually shipped along with a whole bunch of the other, what we call the PCH DNS stack. And effectively, this is a bunch of machines that run, amongst other things, DNS root services. So we have partnerships with the 3 DNS operators, and they supply the DNS routes as you would get them. We have partnerships with about 400 TLDs that would host their TLDs on this, and of course, Quad9 is there. So the packets that you're sending to Quad9 effectively at some point are going to go through the stack. And the opportunity for anybody to intercept and do something malicious to that is very, very low. So that's a good thing, we think. So and aside from just the opportunity for someone not to do something bad, it also improves performance in the long run for you. And then the thing that Quad9 really started doing, and this was already discussed in detail, so I won't even talk about it, is we get a blacklist. We get a block list from 19 threat information providers. And it seems that the slide didn't work out, but what happens is if anybody queries us for a domain and it's supposed to be something that's hosting malware that's intentionally incorrect, we'd respond with an NX domain. And that's a very, very simple way of providing a firewall in DNS, and there were 2 talks already today that discussed that, so I don't need to explain that, so that's very cool. And on average right now, we're blocking about 2.2 million requests daily. That's actually an undersell, and I don't like talking about the numbers because we do encourage operators to set their forwarders to us so that, you can get the benefit of the block list. As I said, there are 19 providers. IBM is one of them, and if you can think of an antivirus operator, they're probably providing data to the block list. Quad9 is a nonprofit. It's currently the only nonprofit that's doing this. And that makes it special for a few reasons. Number one, its interests are in doing what is good for the internet. So at no stage is it trying to monetize anything that's happening here. So no one's paying money. You're not paying money for the service. Quad9 is not making money from IBM or GCA, or we're not making money from operators when they use it. And I think that's important. I think the fact that it is a non-profit to me makes me feel better about being on the internet, because I know that there's no shareholder that's going to potentially say, we want to try and find a business model for making this work. How does it work? Well, we get funding from the operators, and it runs on top of the PCH network, which is built across the world anyway, which we get funded from industry. So it is a service that is there for you to use. It's for the good of the internet. I mean, I know you hear this a lot, and the skeptics in you are already looking at me going, yeah, he's not telling us something. Well, there's nothing that I'm not telling you. I think the big issue in our community is that there's lack of trust amongst operators, which is why I am here. Thank you, Sergey. To explain what we're doing and to answer any questions that you have. So where we are today, about 121 locations across the world. There's 179 odd physical locations, which means some of the physical locations need hardware upgrades or software upgrades before Quad9 will go live. It is in Prague. There is one in Vienna, and probably all around you, you all know how to use traceroute, so you don't need me to explain that. It is IPv6 enabled, of course. And yes, before I forget, there is a 9.9.9.10 IP, which doesn't sound as cool, which you can use if you do not want the benefit of the blacklist and you just want to use secure private DNS that is available for you. And I think that's all I have time for. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Questions?
Do I need the translator?
Hi, thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
I'm a bit afraid about about using DNS service as malware protection at all. I don't like this idea because it's a nightmare for debugging if things goes wrong. And also, I think that there is a possible attack vector to fool your IBM system for some domain, which, let's say, will be malware not being malware. If it's some big name like Google, you probably have a whitelist, but it's some small local company, it's not. So that's the question, how would you deal with it?
So it's not just IBM that's providing data. There's 18 other providers that are doing it. So it's not just an IBM service. IBM is just somebody who gave us money, and because they gave us the 9.9 prefix, we've got to say their name all the time. That's the truth, right? Yes, they're false positives. And the gentleman ahead of me said that very nicely. There's always going to be the opportunity for something to go wrong. But there's a checklist that you can see online on the website. There's even an API. I'm not sure if it's available publicly yet, but there is an API for you to test whether or not something is being blocked. So the odds of something getting in there, potential. The odds of something getting in there that you do not want in there. So for example, nick.cz, which clearly should not ever be in there, right? There's a whitelist as well. So there's a whitelist for common things. Whether or not this is the right way to approach it, I don't know. That's a philosophical argument, and we can discuss that over beer. But what is true is this. What is true is that the Internet of Stupid Things is growing. We all know this. Okay? What is true is that the Internet of Stupid Things are causing problems. So you need to have a way to be able to deal with this. When's the last time you upgraded the software on your smart TV at home? My TV doesn't support firmware updates, and it hasn't a year or so after I bought it. So thank you very much, Samsung. Okay, how do you deal with this kind of stuff? And there has to be a way. So for the operators, and don't get me wrong, I was an operator for a long time. But for the operators to sit back and say we don't like this from a philosophical basis is one thing. But you do need a solution as well. And this might not be the perfect solution, but it's certainly a solution for my mother, who doesn't understand anything about internet security, to be able to browse the internet. And I feel safer about it.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for keeping 9.10 as well.
There will be more in the future as well. It'll be announced on the website.
Okay, we also have a question on slide.
I'm going to step away. Do you plan to fix stability issues with your DKIX router, which also affects Quad9 availability? I'm not aware of DKIX problems. You're welcome to reach out to me. I don't know if you can see my email address, and I'm happy to discuss this. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm not aware of there being an issue with a DKIX. So.
And that's it. Thank you very much.